Hey, good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's having a good day. Enjoy the week thus far. Enjoy the devotions that the other guys have been doing. They've all been great. Um, and so, I want to share today's devotion, and I've entitled it Cut Loose. And as everyone said, we're talking about the message that the Lord gave Brother Jody on Sunday. Great message. And he entitled it The Four Anchors, and it came out of Acts 27 9 through 29 was the base of it, but then there was some other scriptures he went to there a little bit later as well. But the four anchors were the anchor of stability, unity, renewal, and hope. And I included those verses in there in which he gave reference to each one. And with that, we kind of look at it, the anchor of stability, holding it together and talking about what does an anchor do, um, and then finding stability, um, you know, something to hold with, and then the unity, and he was talking about the church and the people that we associate with, and then the anchor of renewal, and then the anchor of hope, and each one of those just was very good, and a lot of questions in that as far as what it is that we consider the anchors of our life. When the storms come, what do we turn to? Who do we turn to? What do we turn to? But toward the end of his message, something that really spoke to me, he asked the question, what do we need to cut loose? And I immediately um, was thinking back of the Bob Goff book that we covered uh, several years ago in the church, and he talks about, I think it was a Thursday. He said he quit something on every Thursday. And when we look at that, we think about people who quit, and we not to be a quitter and things like that. But in our life, so many times that as we go through life, we take all these things and we just continue to try to hold and carry and juggle and do this and do this and do this. Um, but in this story here, Paul, and they're in a major storm here, literally out on the ship, and had been out there for, I think it was about 14 days, um, just of constant storm. Um, and so then in verse 31, it picks up and says, Paul said to the centurion, to the soldiers, except these abide in the ship, you cannot be saved. And of course, up to this point in time, what's happened is that those who were on the ship, 200 or 370, 276, I think it was, that was on the ship, a lot of them were, as Paul, were prisoners, that was having to go and um, stand trial, more or less, and a lot of them were, the soldiers who were responsible for taking these prisoners, um, and getting them safely to the trial. And Paul is kindly, again, prisoner, but is telling them that the Lord has told him that they're going to be okay. Stay on the ship, and a lot of them was wanting to abandon, um, and get kindly in the lifeboats, if you would, and go other ways. And Paul tells them, you're not going to make it. So they cut the ropes off, and now they're all anchored down, all four anchors, and they're holding on and riding out the storm. And Brother Jody used this scripture here in Ecclesiastes 4:11. He says, and again, if two lie together, then they have heat. But how can one be warm alone? And if one prevail against another, two shall withstand him. And a threefold cord is not quickly broken. And then we actually used that a little bit Sunday night when we was teaching of his analogy of that, of the cord that he used, and how, you take the one cord, and he said, you could pull a vehicle with it, tow it. But if you were to unravel it and take a string out of it, that one string is not going to make it. And then I like the analogy he had, that inside that rope, on the outside was woven cords or strands, and then there was a solid cord in the middle of that, and that's where the strength came from. And he's talking about that being the Lord in our life. But what are some of the things that we need to cut loose? What's some of the things we need to quit? And as I mentioned the Bob Goff book before, in our lives, when the storms come, I think so many times we make it harder on ourselves because of the things that we try to do to, you know, be self sufficient in the storms of life. But yet, when we go back and we start looking at this list um, in here, where do you gain your stability from? A lot of the things I think that we all hold on to or that occupies a lot of our time are not going to give us stability. And so we need to, you know, cut loose from those. Unity, um, friends, family, um, you know, whoever it might be. When the storms of life come, are these people in which you can count on? Are they bringing out the good in you? Are they, um, do they draw you closer to the Lord, or do they kindly push you further to the world? And if it's not people who is strengthen our faith and people who, are helping, us to be what God's called us to be, if they're negative influences in our life, it might be that we need to cut those people loose. That we need to, stay with people who we can be, united with people that we can draw strength from. And renewal, what do you look for renewal? Um, a lot of times people go back to their old ways and think, well, it was better here. Children of Israel did that a lot. We'd been better off if we'd been left in Egypt. But what brings about your renewal in your life? If it's not, things of the Lord, praying and fasting and, church and things like that, there might be things there we need to cut off. And then the big one here is hope. Where do you find your hope? Um, you know, do you hope in a relationship? Do you hope that a pill or a drink or something like that is going to solve your problems? The answer to that is no, they're not going to. And so you need to cut those things loose in your life. And so just, something that I have to do a lot. I still remember that, as I said, Bob Goff book, and there's a lot of things in my life that, you know, attach themselves to us and they weigh us down. And so just a good opportunity to, anchors are important, but we need to make sure we have good anchors that's going to do their job and not be weighed down with things that's not going to survive the storm. So pray you got something out of that. We love you. Pray you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you in church Sunday.